So again, I would like to welcome everyone to our meeting tonight for the Downtown Fairview, Cooksville and Hospital Draft Official Plan Amendments and Built Form Standards. So for those who haven't met me yet, my name is Erin Senior, and I am the Community Engagement Coordinator for the Community Relations Office in Planning and Building, and I will be facilitating the meeting tonight. Before we begin, next slide. Before we begin, I would like to do a land acknowledgement. So I would like to acknowledge the lands which constitute the present day City of Mississauga as being part of the treaty and traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Huron-Wendat and Wyandot Nations. We recognize these people and their ancestors as people who inhabited these places, these lands since time immemorial. The city is home to many global Indigenous peoples. As a municipality, the City of Mississauga is actively working towards reconciliation by confronting our past and our present, providing space for Indigenous peoples within their territory to recognize and uphold their treaty rights and support Indigenous peoples. We formally recognize the Anishinaabe origins of our name and continue to make Mississauga a safe space for all Indigenous peoples. So welcome. Next slide, please. So we want to know, why are we here tonight? Tonight, I'll be facilitating discussion with our panelists and yourselves about the draft official plan amendment for Downtown Fairview, Cooksville Hospital, and the proposed built form standards for these areas. This event will include some polls as well as Q&A sessions, and you are encouraged to share your thoughts and comments throughout the presentation in the chat. Please know we are recording this presentation and we'll be reposting it on the project website at a later date. Can I have the next slide? So, participation guidelines. As we all know, we've participated in lots of webinars over the last 2 years. We want to make sure that when we're participating actively, equitably, and with respect. During the event, because this is a webinar, you can type your comments, your questions, your thoughts into the chat function, which is to the right of your screen. It's a little bubble icon, and that will go to all the participants so we can see what's happening. Staff will address questions as they come up within the chat, but those that are more complex or that we think will be better for our discussion tonight, we're going to save, and then I will address those during our question and answer period to our panelists. If you're joining us by phone, and I believe we do have a couple folks who are, please just press *3 on your phone if you want to be heard during our question and answer period. And again, while we have our polls, I'll read them out so you can hear what they are. And at a later date, if we're not able to get to you, I will be posting the project lead's name, and phone number. And if you have questions, please feel free to just call them with them. Next slide, please. So sometimes we run into technical issues, and I'm sure we've all experienced that through these last couple of years while we've been doing these presentations. We've got 2 types of technical assistance to help you tonight. For staff and counselors that are joining us, we do have 2 folks who will help you with any hardware issues or WebEx. So you can just type in the chat and say you need some assistance and we can help you there. For folks that are joining us from their home or from their own computer or laptops or cell phones, you can call Amy Campbell, and we'll put her phone number in the chat right now, and I'll say it out loud to those. So her phone number is 905-615-3200, and her extension is 5368. Again, if anyone's having an issue, you could say, I've got an issue, and we can send you her number. Again, if you didn't catch it this time, we'll make sure we resolve it to the best of our abilities. Next slide. So for webinar events, we find that a stacked layout is just a best view. So you can get a sense of, you can see the presentation, and then when we take the presentation down, you get to focus on the person who's speaking. So specifically when the counselors come up to speak. So for this one, you just want to go to your, if you want to change your view, you can do that now. And it's the layout icon on the top right of your screen. And if you're on a desktop computer, and if you're on a cell phone, you're going to press the three-dot function, and then you can select the stacked view. So we're going to go to our next slide now. And this was more or less our housekeeping for tonight. So we usually do a poll just because we're on a webinar. We want to see who's in the room tonight. It's good for everyone to understand that, you know, there are 79 people right now joining us. I know that you can't see everyone individually, but we'd like to get a sense of who's here. So we run our polls through Slido, and you can see at the very bottom of your screen, there's a green dot that says Slido beside it. Now, if you press that, you're going to see a poll pop out. And it's going to ask you who is in the room. So I'm going to read through right now who we have in the questions on the poll. And then as I'm reading this, you can fill out the poll and then you click submit at the bottom. It's like a light green button. And then we'll give us a sense of who's there. So the questions for who is in the room is, are you a resident of Downtown Fairview, Cooksville, or Hospital? Are you a resident of Mississauga outside the 3 downtown areas? Do you work in Downtown Fairview, Cooksville, or Hospital? Are you a business owner or tenant in Downtown Fairview, Cooksville, or Hospital? Are you part of a development industry, such as are you a developer, agent, or planner representing a firm? Are you a nonprofit community group? Or are you something else? So once you've got a chance to fill that out, you can then click send, and it will automatically populate the poll. If you're having trouble with the polls, I'll just give a couple more seconds. Again, if you look at the bottom of your screen, to the right, you can see this green dot that says Slido beside it. So everyone just take a moment to fill out the polls, and then we'll continue on with our engagement tonight. Okay, so let's see. We've got some responses coming in right now, and what I'm seeing is we've got a resident, majority of folks are resident of Downtown Fairview, Cooksville, or others, so about 44%. We've got about 27% representing a development firm. Oh, that's going up to 28. There's around 13% of people who are, or 15% of people who are resident of Mississauga, just outside the downtown area. And we've got about 15% of people from nonprofit community groups. So that's what we've got tonight. So thanks everyone for joining us. I'm going to ask to move to the next slide if we can. And we can take down the slide because we are going to hear opening remarks from Councillor Kovac actually first, and then Councillor DeMarla. And I'd like to thank you both again for joining us. We're happy to have you here. I'm happy to be talking about this again since we've had our great 15-minute city event. And I'm sure, Councillor, you've got some great things to share with us. Please take it away.
I hope that I do. Erin, thank you for your warm welcome, and to all of those who've joined today. I see 76 attendees. I think we have to be optimistic about that large number, and perhaps others who might trickle in between now and by the time the meeting concludes. To all of the residents who've joined today's meeting, I hope you'll have an opportunity to take back a lot of good information, share your feedback. If you feel at any time that you need to reach either Councillor DeMarla or myself or Councillor Dasco, who's here as well, or any member of the team within planning and building at the city, or anyone at the city, I hope you are not shy. Don't feel reticent, and just email us. We're happy to receive your comments at any time. A little bit about myself, having served as the member of council for this area since 2015, and am a resident long time of the downtown core. So when we look at the area or areas that we are considering tonight, Downtown Fairview, Downtown Cooksville, Downtown Hospital, a part of the larger downtown and, let's say, intensification nodes that the Mississauga is aware of, as is, well, others who are in our community, and the fact that we are working together in such a way where we receive LRT, we receive many new residents coming into this area, and trying to find a way comprehensively to make everything fit. And sometimes it could look on paper a bit awkward, but I think the more that you do what we're doing tonight, brainstorm, put together great ideas, and then try to execute upon them in a sensible and tasteful way, you can really, I think, move mountains. What I think this exercise is all about tonight is looking to see if we can get great feedback. I want to hear from the cyclists. I want to hear from the pedestrians. I want to hear from business owners and shoppers and people who walk our local trails and parks. And all of those people make up this community here, these communities, and so their voices are extremely powerful and potent. So I hope you'll again not be shy and share of yourself, and I'm here to listen. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Kovac. Sorry about the typing earlier, guys. Those were wise words. And again, we do support everything that you've said. If anyone has any questions, staff is here. We're here to answer anything you have to say. And again, the councillors as well. I'd now like to bring Councillor DeMarla up for her opening remarks for tonight. Thank you again, Councillor Kovac.
Thank you. And I want to begin by welcoming everybody who's made the time this evening to attend this consultation. It's really important that you hear from us and we hear from you. I also want to thank staff for the outstanding job they've done in bringing forward an updated plan for Cooksville, Fairview, and Downtown Hospital. Short form, I use Cooksville because it's a mouthful, but it is all three regions, but they're all connected. And I also want to welcome my fellow councillors, Councillor Kovac and Councillor Dasko, for their support and help on this. I just want to say that, folks, I believe that what you have in front of you is something that is really different. It's and you know, Andrew Whittemore, who is the Commissioner of Planning, said to me, he thinks this is the most progressive official plan that the City of Mississauga has ever brought forward. So this is, although it's, you know, it's a plan, and so sometimes it can be a little dry, I just want you to understand that this is really, we are pushing the boundaries. And why do I say that? I say that because some of you will recall that a year ago, we hosted something called 15-Minute Cooksville. And the impetus for that was very simple. What I learned as a counselor and as a new counselor was every time I spoke with the planning folks or the developers, there were two words that I heard consistently: transit-oriented planning and intensification. And I support both of those. Of course, we want more public transit. We need more intensification. But I felt that that was unfinished business, because what I wanted as a resident is a neighborhood. And just because you have transit and just because you're housing people, you know, how do you go from housing people to a neighborhood is the same as how do you go from house to home. There's that magic element when a house becomes a home. And when does a plan or building these high rises actually turn into a neighborhood? And so to me, that was when you can build a neighborhood, and a neighborhood is where people come together. And the best way that people can come together is if we actually walk the streets we live on. Because if you're in a car, you're not going to talk to anybody, you're not going to see anybody. But what if you actually walked to your grocer, you walked to your dry cleaner, you walked to buy your coffee? Now that's a neighborhood. So my challenge to the staff here was, I want Cooksville not just about intensification. I don't want to hear about transit-oriented planning. What I want is an end result where people can walk within 15 minutes to all of the things that we typically need, whether it's borrowing a book, whether it's you know, just going to church or whatever it is, or whether it's just because you want to pick up some flowers for your girlfriend. You should be able to walk and not have to jump into a car. And the thing that I was very determined to point out was, just because you have transit doesn't mean it's walkable. Because we have lots of examples, and I always use Hillcrest. Some of you are very familiar with Hillcrest. We have the high rises, so we have intensification. It's on the goal line, so it's transit oriented. But those folks can only get to Toronto on that GO train. But if they wanted to buy a a carton of milk, guess what? They have to get in their car. So how did that transit-oriented work out for us? It didn't build a neighborhood. So so this is the next step to go beyond intensification and transit-oriented planning to people-oriented, walkable planning. And so there are things in this plan. I don't want to speak to it because I don't want to steal staff's thunder, but as you do the presentation, I hope staff will take the time to point out these little things in the built form that have been put in for the first time to try and create that walkable neighborhood in Cooksville. And staff, what I say to staff is the success of this plan we'll know in the next 10 years if Cooksville becomes walkable. But I want to say this, I know there's a lot of developers here. We can't do it alone. Staff can't do it alone. Councillors can't do it alone. It has to be a partnership. So we need our developers to work with us. And I know many of you are excited by the idea of the 15-minute neighborhood. I know many of you want to partner and make this a vision. I'm passionate about it. This is a wonderful thing that's happening in Cooksville, and I hope all of the residents and participants here today get a taste of the new Cooksville that we're building. So thank you again.
Counselor, that was so lovely. Thank you. That was really good. Yeah, I think it really speaks to what you're going to be seeing tonight. Again, as you said, it's policy. So we're going to get into details. We're going to get into looking at some of the changes that are going to be making Cooksville more walkable, neighborhood-oriented community. The same goes for Fairview and Hospital as well. So I just, again, sort of to reiterate what you had said, I guess if we can bring up the panelist slide, I just wanted to have everyone just take a moment and think about really how we have been living over the last 2 years. That really with COVID, a lot of us have become more localized. And that's really brought out all the necessities of in our own neighborhood. So being able to walk and get something is really important. And so this is the thing that we brought you here today to discuss further. So we're really gathered here tonight to learn about how the official plan policies and built form standards can help support the creation of this within these 3 areas. So how does a 15-minute city come to be with the help of the city and the official plan? I just wanted to introduce you tonight we've got 2 panelists here. So we've got Christian Bennett, he's an urban planner, and then we also have Eamon Jalul, who will be joining us as well, and he is the urban designer. If we could go. So Christian Bennett, he's a professional planner, and he's been at the city since 2019. Christian has experience leading community area policy and zoning bylaw reviews. And previously, he was a planner with Appeal Public Health, where he led an initiative to positively influence the design of communities to promote walkability and healthy design. And he holds a Master's of Urban Planning from McGill University. We're also going to hear today from Eamon Jalul. He's an urban designer and has been with the city since 2019 as well. And Eamon has experience in architecture, planning and development in Canada and abroad on projects of various scales and at different phases in the development process. He also holds a Master's of Urban Planning from McGill University and a bachelor's degree in architecture from the American University of Beirut, and as well as a certificate in real estate development from New York University. So we're very grateful to have both of them here tonight to discuss the policies and the built form standards. So again, Christian, I think we're going to start with you. Let's get into our policies for Fairview.
Okay, great. Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Erin, for that introduction. So now we're going to talk about the city's future plans, of course, for the 3 communities that are located south of the downtown core. So Downtown Fairview, Cooksville, and Hospital. So with improved transit on the way, these 3 communities are expected to grow. And tonight we are presenting a new vision and set of policies that will help to manage this growth. On January 24th, we took a report to Planning and Development Committee. The report was received and the committee gave staff approval to proceed with engagement on the draft policies. So tonight we want to hear from you. We want to hear your feedback on the draft policies so that we can continue to refine the policies to best serve communities of Fairview, Cooksville, and Hospital. So let's begin by discussing the draft official plan amendment. Next slide, please. So with the last policy review of these lands actually completed in the late 1990s, there is a need for us to update the city's official plan. In 2019, we were directed by our council to prepare amendments to the city's official plan, which is the policy document that guides all of Mississauga's planning decisions. Some of you here tonight may have participated in previous visioning exercises in the area, such as the Hurontario Main Street Corridor Master Plan, Cooksville Mobility Hub, Vision Cooksville Study, Dundas Connects Master Plan. So now we propose to move forward with actual policy implementation. As we create new policies for these three communities, there is an opportunity to refresh vision and directions from past studies, particularly in light of recent shifts in provincial and regional planning priorities. Move to the next slide, please. So as many of you may be aware, there's a number of transit initiatives underway in these three communities that of course will improve connectivity to the rest of the city and the Greater Toronto Area. Light rail transit is under construction along Hurontario Street. We have planning work underway for bus rapid transit service along Dundas Street. And there is the potential for two-way all-day GO service on the Milton GO line, Cooksville GO station. So to optimize their investments, rapid transit, the province does require municipalities to plan for more people and jobs in areas within approximately 800 meters of a rapid transit station or stop. So these areas are called major transit station areas, or MTSAs for short. So as a first step to meeting these new provincial requirements, the region is currently undertaking a study. Will define the precise boundaries for growth near rapid transit. They are proposing 5 MTSAs within Downtown Fairview, Cooksville, and Hospital. You can see the 5 MTSAs in the slide in front of you. They are to be planned with a mix of uses, additional housing and people, and improved transportation, road, and pedestrian connectivity. Next slide, please. So if you've had a chance to look at the policy summaries and all the technical documents available online, you'll see a wide range of policy changes that are being proposed for the city's official plan. Here in the pie chart, you can see some of these policy changes. So, for example, establishing a vision and guiding principles, ensuring adequate community infrastructure, improving transportation, creating high-quality urban form, setting out minimum and maximum building heights, as well as directing uses of land. So all of these policies have been included in the documents online to ensure there is a real coordinated approach to public engagement. However, the intent is that some of these policies will actually be implemented for future citywide MTSA amendment to the city's official plan. Next slide, please. So of course, as we've heard from Councillor Demerla last year, we had a successful event with the community where we discussed the concept of the 15-minute city and how it can be applied to manage growth. We focused on Cooksville in particular during that meeting. And, you know, as we've heard, the 15-minute city is an approach to city planning that aims to build high-quality, livable communities where the basic needs of everyday life can be reached within a 15-minute walk. The approach emphasizes the features of the community, that are needed to serve residents. So including parks, having grocery stores, access to jobs, medical clinics, schools, shops, restaurants, and more. During the meeting, we presented 3 key directions for creating policy for Cooksville. Create a mixed-use, vibrant community, plan for more housing and people, and achieve a walkable and connected community. We heard from you that Cooksville, with its vibrant mix of shops and businesses, already contains many of the elements of a 15-minute city. And indeed, that it is important that those elements are not just retained, but strengthened as development and growth occurs in Cooksville. The policies being presented tonight build on these directions, apply them across the three communities of Downtown Fairview, Cooksville, and Hospital. So let's now first focus on the proposed policies for Downtown Fairview. We can move to the next slide, perfect. So today, Downtown Fairview is defined by a mix of sub-areas, each with its own distinct character and built form. The vision for Downtown Fairview is for an attractive and walkable community that builds on this context. So having a mix of shops, restaurants, cafes, and more services, including daycares along here Ontario Street, improved connections, trails, and of course, key feature of the community, the Cooksville Creek, mix of housing forms, and a clear transition in building height from the unlimited heights and densities that we see to the north in the downtown core. Can we move to the next slide, please? So of course, as the community grows and more people live in Fairview, there's a need for well-designed parks and open spaces to serve. So we are proposing policies that will secure more park space through purchase by the city and through new developments. The exact location and size of those parks and open spaces will continue to be determined by the city, but you can see the conceptual locations for parks on the map in front of you. New policies for pedestrian connections will further improve walkability of the area, connect residents with one another, and provide a direct means to access shops, restaurants, daycares, jobs, and other services and amenities within the community. Next slide, please. So the success of the 15-minute city concept in downtown Fairview will rely in part on achieving a minimum amount of people and jobs. Housing and people support transit investment, and of course, reinforce a vibrant mix of uses that we look for in a 15-minute city. So here we are proposing maximum building heights that enable building of that additional housing, with a particular focus on the Hurontario Street corridor. Housing options can include appropriately sized family units, opportunities for aging in place with age-friendly housing, of course, affordable housing for all household income levels. The slide in front of you, you can see the tallest heights are proposed at Elm Drive West in Hurontario with maximum heights of up to 50 stories. There's a transition to maximum heights of 25 stories, east and south from that location. That will enable more infill and development on those sites. South of Fairview Road East, southern quadrant or portion of downtown Fairview, maximum heights of 3 stories are proposed that reflect the existing townhomes in that area. Next slide, please. So as we've heard, proximity to services and amenities is an important component of a 15-minute city. And through this exercise, we are proposing policies that will support these uses and ensure that they are integrated into future development plans. So here we show some of those policies at a high level. They include policies requiring at-grade retail and service commercial in new buildings on Hurontario Street, completing the street network, extension of Korea Drive to improve walkability, expanding the range and mix of uses in key locations. You can see those locations in purple in front of you to enable more mixed-use development, and ensuring that there is a replacement office, retail, and service commercial floor space as redevelopment of mixed-use designated or office designated lands occur. We can move forward to the next slide, please. Now let's go over the urban form policies at a high level. For everyone's benefit, we will be discussing these urban form requirements in more detail later in the evening when we discuss the built form standards. So of course, new policies on built form are needed for Downtown Fairview to help achieve that vision we've described earlier and ensure good design in a vibrant, attractive public realm. So we propose both general and street-specific policies. Here you can see some of those general policies outlined. They deal with matters such as transition in height between higher and lower density development in the community, ensuring there is continued access to sunlight with minimum separation distances between taller buildings, policies around creating podiums in taller buildings, creating visual interest with the use of materials, variations in height where more than one tower is proposed. We can move to the next slide, please. So along with the general urban form policies I've just described, we are also proposing new policies that describe street frontage conditions in downtown Fairview. So here you see two broad categories of streets, A and B streets, each with their own function, character. The A streets are shown in blue. These will be primarily commercial or mixed use nature, while the B streets are primarily residential in character. So as with the general urban form requirements, we have street frontage conditions requirement that speak to podiums, for example, that are more generally described in policy with greater detail provided in the built form standards. Of course, our next panelist will be describing those urban form requirements in more detail so we can have that discussion during the evening. So at this stage, I'd like to open this up for discussion, and I'll pass it over to Erin to help facilitate a poll, a few questions and answers on what you've just heard.
Great, thanks so much, Christian. So unfortunately, we're having some technical issues, so we'll just be having reflections and questions rather than the poll right now.
Okay.
I wanted just to open it up to the chat and see if some folks have some questions that they would like asked. I know we've heard a lot right now. And let's just see if we've got something right here. Okay, so we do have some questions that have come up around the streetscape. I'm going to just start off, Christian, and I'm wondering, Jasmine, if you can just take down the presentation just for now while we have the Q&A and we can see Christian. All right, so the first question that we have on streetscapes, and it is, have we considered how physical space impacts the ability to communicate? So that's a really interesting thought, right? Like when we look at our physical space, how are we then being able to communicate with each other? How are we interacting with folks? So I'm wondering if you want to provide some reflections on that.
Sure. So absolutely, I think one of the key considerations for planning with Fairview and the other communities is ensuring that we do have key gathering spaces or meeting places where the community can come together. So we do have, for example, proposed policies around enabling mixed-use development in those key in those key locations that were outlined in purple. So the idea is we do want people to be able to walk to these locations, to meet their neighbor, and to meet their everyday needs around whether it's, going shopping for grocery stores, dropping off their kids at daycare, or even accessing jobs within.
Thank you so much. I'm just looking at some of the questions that we've got coming up here, and I think we anticipated that there would be some questions around heights. So I want to just put these to you right now. One of the questions that we've got is, how do you anticipate that the building heights will impact the use of our communal spaces, like the GO station, parks, for example? Do you have any thoughts on that you'd like to share?
Sure. So we will be discussing in more detail the built form standards around heights and how they should transition to parks, but certainly that is an important component to creating a walkable, human-scaled built environment. We want to ensure there is a transition in height next to parks, for example. We want to maintain that access to sunlight in public spaces. But of course, we will be discussing that in more detail because I think it is certainly a very important component. Design.
It's true. These are really good questions here. So we've just got some other ones that have come up here. There was someone that just wanted to look at the heights along Huron, Ontario. So maybe, Christian, do you want to just talk about some of the heights that we've got coming up along Huron, Ontario right now?
Sure. So we have proposed maximum heights of up to 25 stories along here Ontario Street. Those are heights that are long established in the official plan. It speaks to that desire to achieve a clear transition in heights as you move south along the Huron, Ontario Street corridor. We've had previous studies in the area that looked at heights and other policy recommendations, and which confirmed the appropriateness of the 25 stories. And those are the 25 stories will enable us to achieve more housing and people. So with those heights, when you look at the number of potential development sites in the community, it will result in more people, more jobs, and support all the other things that we want around creating a vibrant 15-minute community.
That's great. And Jasmine, I'm sorry, can you just bring up the presentation again? I think it would be good if we could look at the map really quickly and just give the participants who weren't able to catch that slide, let them just have a quick look again. So it was again slide 16 and 17 that just spoke about the heights on Huron, Ontario. So I'm going to ask another one just while we're waiting for that to come up. Again, we're looking at heights here. So the question is, so as the height restrictions along the proposed section of Huron, Ontario are maintained, and residents who travel east-west to Toronto or to Oakville and further west will still use their cars, which will impact the traffic flow and cause congestion, and they will probably find alternative routes. So again, just let's talk about the heights in this area right now. And so again, we can just speak to, maybe we can point out the different heights right here. So the question again was, how do you anticipate that the building heights will impact the use of our communal spaces, the GO station, parks, for example? So if we just look at where those proposed heights are, and then we can speak to that question.
Okay, so you can see in the northeast portion of Downtown Fairview, you know, the current built form there is more of a tower in the park style development. And we are proposing to maintain similar maximum heights through the policy changes. There will be other policy requirements around built form that will ensure there is a transition to those existing green spaces in that portion of Downtown Fairview and maintain access to sunlight.
Great.
As you move south, you see, again, the recommendation around 25 stories continuing. You have, in certain cases, it goes even lower. So you can see recommendation around maximum height of 18 stories immediately west of Huron, Ontario Street. And that's based, again, on ensuring that there is that transition with lower and medium density residential uses to the west of Downtown Fairview.
Great. We did have someone that was just, can you talk specifically about the height recommendations at the southeast corner of Fairview and Huron, Ontario?
So Fairview Road, I assume Fairview Road East. So the recommended height again is for a maximum of 25 stories at that corner.
Great. Okay.
May I? I'm so sorry, Aaron. It's
Sure,
John
jump in.
back
That's
here.
okay. That's
And
all right.
Christian,
We're having a dialogue.
If I could just jump in and say and totally respect some of the comments and the questions that have come in. And I mean, I feel the same way, and I'm sure Councillor Demerla does as well. So there's this intention that we have to limit to the best of our abilities as a council and a city, and correct me if I'm wrong at any point, Christian or Aaron or anyone else, 225 when and where is reasonable. In the downtown core, and if you can picture in your head the square one in the surrounding area, it was allowed about 20 years ago or so, unlimited height and density. And that's why we've got such great heights within that downtown core area. The Marilyn Monroe Towers of over 50 stories. So that was very, very high when that was first erected. And yet 10 years later, we're now talking about the 81-story building that's going to be built by Rogers. The reason that it is happening is because of, again, this unlimited height and density zone that was marked for the downtown core. Anybody has questions on that, we can try to answer how and why that happened, but essentially it was a previous term of council in the year 2000 is when that was struck to encourage growth, residential and other types of growth, and really, build this city up in a way, because for so long Mississauga had sprawled. So it was an intention and a belief on the part of council and the city at that time to go in that direction. Now, Mississauga official plan 2012, the downtown 21 and master plan, which has been touched and amended and endorsed by council as well, speaks to where the city is trying smartly to push and influence growth in a strategic fashion. So along here, Ontario, from the lake all the way up to connecting with Brampton, and that's the justifier for our having an LRT and having that be funded entirely by the province. And I think Christian was trying to make mention of this in descending kind of order, a transition from where there is this great height in the downtown core descending downwards to the lake. That's our intention, to have a transition from downtown downwards along here, Ontario. Christian, you can help fill in the gaps where needed, but we certainly want to make sure that those who are on this call, who are a part of the development community, know that that is our intention. So they want to come forward and they want to build as high as they can for obvious reasons, monetary wise. But we as a council, on behalf of the residents, want to, of course, push and ensure that we get the best kind of developments for the communities that we represent. Because when it comes down to it, people have to live in these communities and they have to be reasonably structured. And that's why we're talking about mixed communities, where Councillor DeMerla referenced, if you can get everything done in 15 minutes, that's a positive. Mm-hmm. You have a park nearby, you have a parkette, you've got something to do, you've got places to go, you can pick up your groceries, you can take your kid to somewhere and you can feel safe while you're doing it. And other modes of transit, maybe not just LRT, but cycling and other kinds of forms. So I mean, I'm very enthusiastic about everything. I believe in the strategy that the city is behind and continuing to employ, and that's why I'm also enthusiastic about being on this call and taking feedback. So I apologize for the rant.
No, that's okay, Councillor Kovac.
And I'll step away.
Great. I just realized we do need to keep kind of on track with this. Again, thank you for your comments. So we are going to address some of these questions later on in the presentation, but I would like to move now to the next section on policies for Cooksville. And we are going to have to be mindful of time. So again, Christian, it's okay to kind of speed it up just a little bit. All right. Okay. Thanks again,
sure.
Guys.
Okay, so downtown Cooksville, of course, is a destination for newcomers to Canada, a place for entrepreneurs and small businesses to set up shop and thrive. The vision and guiding principles build on this context and describe how growth can contribute to creating a walkable and thriving community. So here you see a clear demarcation between Cooksville GO Station and the area around the station that will become the focal point for transit-oriented development, and a vibrant Main Street focus and human-scale built form envisioned for the historic intersection of Hurontario and Dundas streets. So next slide, please. So similar to Downtown Fairview, we are proposing new policies for a network of parks and open spaces, as well as pedestrian connections. So these are key benefits that can result from growth, and they will help to achieve that concept of a vibrant 15-minute commute. Pedestrian connections in particular provide direct and safe access to shops and businesses. So here you can see some of those locations shown conceptually, and we will continue as a city to I guess, identify the precise location as development and growth occurs in Cooksville. So next slide, please. So as with Downtown Fairview, we do need to accommodate more housing and people to help achieve that concept of a 15-minute city. So here we are proposing maximum heights of up to 25 stories near the Cooksville GO station and along Hurontario Street north of Agnes Street as the focal point for transit-oriented development. Further south, as you move to the historic intersection of Hurontario and Dundas Streets, maximum heights of up to 18 stories are proposed, with the vision of a Main Street focus for that area. Further east, west, along Dundas Street, we are increasing maximum heights up to 16 stories to enable more housing and people. Currently, the maximum heights along that stretch of Dundas Street are more reflective of a low-rise retail character. Finally, we are also proposing other policies to support a range of housing options in Cooksville, including housing that is affordable to lower and middle income households. So next slide, please. So as we've heard with the 15-minute city event last year, Cooksville already integrates many of the elements of a 15-minute city. Here you can see the policies that will play a role in creating spaces for shops and services to continue. Outlined in yellow are 2 nodes that are planned to serve as one-stop destinations for the community, where the greatest mix of services and amenities readily available and accessible by foot. These nodes are located, again, around the Cooksville GO station area, further south at the historic intersection of Hurontario and Dundas Streets. New roads will help to complete the street network. We are also changing the land use designation of several properties, and you can see those highlighted in purple. They recognize the importance of those sites in maintaining access to jobs at the urban plaza on the southeast corner of Hurontario and Dundas Streets. Along Hurontario and Dundas Streets, other policies will require retail and service commercial uses on the ground floor of new buildings. And finally, additional policies will ensure, as with Downtown Fairview, that existing commercial and office floor space are replaced as redevelopment, mixed use and office designated lands occur. So next slide, please. So here we have, again, the general urban form policies. I won't go into too much detail since we will be discussing them later, but you can see a whole list of general policies on the slide in front of you. Next slide, please. As with Fairview, we propose policies to establish new street frontage conditions. In Cooksville, there are 3 categories of streets identified, each with their own function and character. See the A streets in blue and shades of yellow that are largely mixed use and commercial. They will be the places that people can access their services and amenities within that walk. B streets are shown in red and are more residential in character. And we also have Cooksville C streets that are shown in green that provide for a more walkable grid of streets and are the ideal location for service and parking access. So as with the general urban form policies, the street frontage conditions are described more generally, policy with more detail provided in the built form standards. Again, we will have our next panelist, Eamon, describe all of these urban form policies in more detail later in the evening. So at this stage, I'd like to pass it back to Erin to help facilitate a few questions and answers on what you've just heard.
Great, thanks again. So again, we've got some technical glitches with the poll, so we're just going to continue with the questions and reflections. One of the questions that has come up, Christian, which I think is going to be a theme in a lot of our engagements, is around what sort of affordable housing will be included, or what are we thinking about for these areas. So can you please provide a little bit of context for that?
Sure. So we are currently working on proposals for what is called inclusionary zoning. It's currently in draft form, so we will be holding a community meeting on February 24th to discuss those proposals. And essentially, inclusionary zoning is a tool under the Planning Act, which is the planning legislation guides all planning decisions made by municipalities across the province. So it's a tool that allows municipalities to require a minimum percentage of affordable housing units. So that's something that we're interested in as a city, and we are pursuing, of course, proposals to enable it to occur in these three communities, including Cooksville.
Great, thanks, Christian. I realize I'm going to take one more question because we are kind of running a little bit short on time here. And then we can come back to some of the other questions that folks have put forward in the chat. And again, I very much appreciate that you're putting your questions forward in the chat, and we will try to address as many of them as we can. One of the questions that did come up was just around cycling and how that connects to the 15-minute city. So I'm wondering if you can talk just quickly about any kind of cycling thoughts around cycling infrastructure, how we're planning for that, where we support that, what's happening with the city and cycling in these
Absolutely.
areas.
So we definitely support more cycling infrastructure as something that can support alternative modes of transportation in these three areas. And the city is currently working on a changing lanes project that will update the city's manual to ensure that our designing cycling infrastructure with best practices drawn from around the world. So looking at intersections, looking at separated cycling facilities, for example. And we also have in our official plan a number of cycling routes identified for these three communities. So including, for example, cycling infrastructure along Hurontario and Dundas streets, and a whole number of secondary cycling routes to ensure that we are creating that minimum grid of safe, accessible cycling infrastructure that people can use.